Hey everyone, I just wanted to make a few short comments on the discussion that we just had. This was our first discussion. I think you all did a very good job of asking open-ended questions. For the most part, everybody included specific cited information or evidence from the readings and videos to support your ideas. Please make sure that you always do that in these discussion assignments. Also, I try to give as detailed as feedback as I can. So if you have any questions about that, please let me know. In terms of what we were talking about New Mexico's earliest first peoples, as well as the period of colonization and also issues of historical memory. And so what I want to just talk about for a couple of minutes here is historical memory. And I think sometimes we don't think about the distinction between what is history and what is our historical memory. Sometimes historical memory has nothing to do with history, or at least very little. One case in point is the Santa Fe Fiesta. Um, we've studied it a little bit in this class. In my face-to-face class, we talked about it a little bit, and some of the students there who had attended, when I asked them, what was your experience with the fiesta, they mentioned first, everybody's just there to have a good time. People are drinking a lot. They mentioned zozobra, which was an element of fiesta. Excuse me, I was about to sneeze. That wasn't added until 1924 by a guy named Will Schuster. So some of the things that are most prominent about fiesta are not the things that were included in it when it began in 1712. In 1712, it was a way of trying to commemorate the reconquest of New Mexico in a way that kind of glorified Diego de Vargas and told the story that his reconquest and the Spanish reconquest of New Mexico had been done bloodlessly. Of course, we've read that that wasn't quite the case. The whole of the 1690s were full of bloody conflicts between Vargas and different Puebloan groups at different times as the Spanish tried to reassert their control of New Mexico. But that story wasn't what Fiesta was about. Fiesta was about trying to forge a new community in New Mexico at a time about a decade removed from the last of the kind of most pronounced reconquest violence, when now the threat was nomadic people. Now there were Comanches in the area. Utes and Apaches were also still kind of threatening, as were Navajos, from the perspective, again, of the Pueblo Mestizo Nuevo Mexicano people. The fiesta was about trying to bring those people together, trying to lay aside the divisions of the past in order to present a more unified front, create a unified community. In order to do that, a lot of the actual historical events were glossed over, sanitized, whatever it might be. So I think it's important for us to consider that when we look at events that were meant to mark historical happenings or historical figures. The Oñate statues, of course, bring up these kinds of questions, and many of you commented on that in your discussion posts as well. Some of us are also trying to figure out, there's that comment of, it's been 400 years, why can't these people leave the past in the past? But there were a few of you who made very good comments to that attitude, along the lines of, we need to remember as well that the Pueblos, their voice has been marginalized throughout history. Even after, Fiesta, trying to put together a more happy, shiny community, as I've described, the Pueblo voice was marginalized through all of that. Their side of the story was taken out of history, and it wasn't allowed to exist, except we know that it did continue to exist in Pueblo oral traditions and other means of preserving their own past. And so when a statue like the Oñate statue is erected, it's something that brings out a great historical feeling that has a lot more to do with the statue itself, or even a lot more to do than just with Oñate himself. It's about hundreds of years of marginalization, hundreds of years of trying to fight to preserve traditional cultures and lifeways in the context, different styles of colonialism, whether from Spain, whether within the Mexican nation or in the United States. And so and this is kind of going back to something we talked about in the first unit, in the very beginning of Unit 2, is, for many Native people, the past is very present. And it's something that non-Native people don't recognize as well. Or I shouldn't say that, but just don't always think of in the same terms. And so I think hopefully that gives us some understanding of why some of these statues are so controversial. And I also wanted to end with the note as we move forward to yet another period of controversy in New Mexico history, something you've already been tweeting about, the U.S.-Mexico War. Um, we need to remember that there usually isn't a definitive solution or a kind of definitive, this is it, history for a lot of these debates and a lot of these controversies. There are multiple, messy, different perspectives. That's what history is about, is trying to collect as many of those as possible so we can figure out the pluralism of our past. But that doesn't mean that those things, that what we find always will fit in nice boxes or can always be resolved in a kind of definitive way. And that's okay. I think that's something that we need to realize with history or a lot of other disciplines. Even though we think there are these definitive solutions, it's okay that there aren't. And we should learn from that reality that there long haven't been. There have long been controversies that have not been quite solved. And we need to think about what that means and what that means for us now. So anyway, I